God does nothing just for the sake of doing it. But what he does, is for our sake, in order that we who cannot see him, can know him by his works, and begin to forge a relationship with him, by the things he has revealed to us about himself. This study will be about the love of God, towards any and everyone, who trust in him, and stand on his word, even if it will cost you your life. This study will be about the 3 young men who were tossed into the fiery furnace and lived, and how God allowed, and orchestrated this event, to bring glory to himself, and set a pattern for us, who would come to read and believe, in the power of the God of all creation. Let's get started. This study will be taken from the book of Daniel, chapters 2 and 3. Scripture says,
And in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him.
Behind the scenes, God wanted to glorify himself, in the eyes of King Nebuchadnezzar, who at this point in time, was the greatest man, with the greatest kingdom in all the earth. To get his attention, God gave him some troublesome dreams, that woke him out from his sleep.
Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king, and the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream.
So, King Nebuchadnezzar summoned all his magicians and psychics, to have them tell him the dream and the meaning of it. And they asked the king, saying,
Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, The thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, There is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asketh such things at any magician, or astrologer, or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh.
You remember, God gave to the king this dream, knowing it would trouble him, and knowing he would involve his magicians and psychics, to decipher it, and knowing his wise men could not. God now had the king and his wise men, just where he wanted them, at a place where they were helpless to do the impossible.
For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation.
Again, God knew that the king would call for the killing of all the wise men, to include Daniel. And by this, he knew Daniel would receive an audience before the king, to help him to resolve this impossible matter. Now, I want to pause here to expose some things. If you were arrested for nothing more than just being a wise man, and sentenced to death because no one could tell the king his dream and interpret it, would you volunteer to the king and say, Give me time and I will give you the interpretation? God never told Daniel he would give him the interpretation. Yet, Daniel had that much faith in God, that he would show him the dream, and give him the interpretation, that he told the king with confidence, that he would be able to reveal the dream and interpretation to him, if just given a measure of time. How many of us in the church today operates in that kind of faith? For it is this kind of people that God uses to get his will done in the earth. So, Daniel was allowed to go home, and with that time, come to know the dream and the interpretation thereof. And Daniel involved his companions, and they petitioned God to reveal the secrets of the dream, in order that they might not be killed along with the other wise men of Babylon. For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. And it is from such instances as this, that the mighty works of God gets done.
Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah, that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. The image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold.
Do you understand what just happened here? God gave to King Nebuchadnezzar power and dominion over all the earth, and everything in it, to include man, beast, and the fowl of the air. Here, we have the first one-world government. By this, King Nebuchadnezzar became proud, and lifted up, and thought more highly of himself than he ought, and he had an image of gold erected. Scripture says,
Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes, the governors, and the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces, to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up.
Does this ring a bell to you? Doesn't the book of Revelation speak of an image built by the ruler of a one-world government? Do you recognize this pattern? Continuing, Scripture says,
Then an herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king hath set up. And whoso falleth not down and worshippeth, shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up.
This is the same exact requirement the Antichrist will force upon the nations, peoples, and tongues, during his one world government reign, that you worship the image of the beast.
There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up.
How is your personal relationship with God? Are you so intimate with God that you know when trouble finds you, that he will deliver you? And is your love of God so strong, that you are willing to die, rather than disappoint him? Few of us in the church has that kind of intimacy with God, and scarcely here in these United States would anybody even consider dying for Christ. But, for the few that will, your tribulation will not be without fruit, but will be for the glory of God, to be manifested in you.
And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of a fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God.
Okay. Now ask yourself, was the tribulation that was come upon these Jewish people the result of the wrath of man, or the result of the wrath of God? It was the result of the wrath of man. But even if it was the result of the wrath of God, he didn't remove them from the heat, smoke, and fire. But rather, he preserved them while they were in it. Therefore remaining faithful to his word, that we are not appointed to his wrath, even if we remain in it. Listen to what Malachi says about the day, when the last generation is thrown into the fire. Scripture says,
For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly, shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings. And ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. And ye shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet, in the day that I shall do this, saith the Lord of hosts.
This is referencing the second coming of Jesus. And on that day, the earth will be thrown into the oven. But in that day, those who are believers who find themselves suddenly in that day, they will remain healed, and no hurt will come upon them. And when that terror is over, they shall walk upon the ashes of the wicked, that was cut off from the earth. And how will that heat and burning suddenly come upon the earth? It is my thoughts it can happen one of two ways. It can be the wrath of God, by him using our weapons of warfare against us, such as a nuclear bomb, that will create fire, and heat, and pillars of smoke, back upon us. Or, it could be a wrath of God, from himself, such as him raining fire and brimstone from heaven upon the earth, causing fire and heat, and pillars of smoke, also back upon us. But however it comes to be, God will put a hedge around his own, and they will be preserved from the terror of that day.
But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also, and the works that are therein shall be burned up.
Peter drew this narrative from what was said by the prophet Malachi. And Peter labeled what that prophet was speaking of as the day of the Lord, or his second coming. Today, somehow, we have renamed the day of the Lord, from his second coming, to the event of a secret rapture. Nevertheless, on the day of the Lord, the earth and all its inhabitants will be entered suddenly into a burning oven. But that burning fire will have a non-effect upon those who believe, and the love of God will preserve them. The day of the Lord will come instantly, and as fast as the blast of an atomic bomb, and with all of its properties of fire, burning heat, and destruction. Will you be caught in the fire that is to come? No one knows when such a day as this will come. But if you would like to be preserved, should it come in your lifetime? Tell God, I know I'm a sinner in need of a Savior. Tell God, I believe Jesus died for my sins. Tell God, I believe he was dead and buried. And tell God, I believe he was raised on the third day. If your confession is from the heart, then, should that day be instantly upon you, so will Jesus be instantly with you, with a fortress around you, to preserve you through the storm. Thanks for watching. I believe that sudden day of destruction, of burning and fire, will be permitted by God, for God. But, will be the work of man, through nuclear warfare, unwittingly, trying to extinct himself. If this study has helped you, please share it with your family and friends, and subscribe and comment, and give it a thumbs up. For behold, the day cometh, that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, and all that do wickedly, shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, says the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root, nor branch. Amen.